Hello Berlin, my name is Coralie Wynn. I am one of the co-founders of Gap Filler and I'm now the director of the initiative full-time.
I'm Ryan Reynolds. I'm also one of the creators of Gap Filler, and after about 6 months of our existence we formed a charitable trust, and I'm now chairman of the trust board, but have a lot less to do with the day-to-day. That's what Coralie does.
Yeah.
Welcome to our office. This is a 10 square meter building sitting on a vacant site where an office building used to be. It's made entirely out of recycled materials and was done mostly with volunteer labor.
Some of the materials are actually ex-demolition materials, and the wall behind us is our feature wall. It has the most inventive insulation, I think, of rubbish and whatnot. But yes, so this is our office that we are based from now.
So we create projects on vacant sites where buildings have been demolished since the series of earthquakes that we've experienced here. And Coralie will talk quite a bit about that, but we just wanted to give a bit of a background first. To give the extent of the devastation here. Christchurch is a city of about 400,000 people, and about 80% of the central city buildings either have been or are being demolished, around 1,300 buildings all up in the central city.
There have been a series of earthquakes, as Ryan said, the very first back in September 2010, but the most significant was on the February 22nd, 2011, when a 6.3 earthquake struck and killed 185 people, which for a city the size of Christchurch is huge. So it's had a massive impact on this city and also on the suburbs. There are whole areas in the east of Christchurch that, as a result of liquid coming up from the quakes called liquefaction, those suburbs have to be abandoned. So you've got mass dislocation of communities and business as a result of this seismic activity.
And there's actually still parts of the central city we can't get into. There's a military cordon around areas, and people can't get in or out because there's still a demolition zone.
Yeah, yeah. So
that's our city.
Times.
Yeah. So our aim as an organization, we try to get some activity happening on these vacant sites, and to use these sites as areas for experimentation where people can try things that actually even before the earthquakes were never possible. So we're hoping not only to restore the city to what it was, but actually to allow it to be something that it never was before.
I think for us, after the September quake, there were all these gaps appearing, and there wasn't anything that normal people, not people that weren't architects or builders or planners, could do to help their city recover. And so, as a result of a few things happening, I'd lost my job in the September quake, and people coming together, we decided that we wanted to experiment and to try something on a vacant site to demonstrate that temporary activity and creative people could actually help the recovery and bring life to the city to help its regeneration, while we were waiting as a city for this rebuild to happen. And that's something as we've gone on, has been really important, of connecting people that wouldn't otherwise have a chance to contribute to their city, to spaces for possibilities, for ideas to take place, for experimentation.
So we'll tell you now a little bit about some of the projects that we've done, and then sort of look forward to where we think we're headed.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you about some of the projects that we've done, and you'll see some images as well. So the very first project was November 25th until December 6th, 2010. So that was after the very first earthquake. It started about 7 weeks afterwards, I guess. And it was done as an experiment. There were 3 of us that came together to do it: Ryan, myself, and Andrew Just, who's an architectural graduate. And we gathered a few more people together, and we used our own money. There wasn't enough time to apply for any funding, so we scrounged what we needed. Fake grass, we borrowed potted plants, we got chairs from the dump and painted them, beach umbrellas and whatnot. It was quite magical. It captured imagination. There were little kids through to quite elderly people that came. I think it was successful because it demonstrated what could be possible in the central city, and that it looked like a bunch of normal people had just done it. it was quite kitsch, but it was accessible, and we learned a lot from it. During the day, it was like a public space, really, a park on private land, and people could eat their lunch or drink a coffee there. We had a coffee truck on site, and then in the afternoons, evenings, it was a live music space, and as it grew dark, it became an outdoor cinema, and we screened a lot of New Zealand films. So after that project, we decided to do another, and we deliberately decided that it must be completely opposite of the first project. We didn't want to do the same thing. So from the very early days, we knew we had to always try new things, be innovative, and not just roll out what really worked well. And so the second project was actually with the help of the Goethe Institute, was Ortszeit, or Local Time, which was an outdoor exhibition of photographs by a Berlin-based artist actually called Stefan Koppelkam, and that project was basically an open air gallery, and those photographs showcase before and after in Berlin in terms of architectural change when the wall came down and 10 years afterwards, which was really apt for Christchurch. Completely different, but another way to use vacant space in the city. But this project was also done with basically no money. And after that, we managed to get a little bit of funding from the council, which gave me a little bit of money. I was still sort of using my redundancy pay to survive at this point from my job that disappeared after the September quake. But we carried on, and of course then we had the February quake and all of that. But we kept going and trying new projects. And the book exchange, the Think Differently book exchange, a fridge on a vacant site, the idea suggested by someone I'd never met, is still on that site today, nearly a year later, and it's completely adopted by the local community. It's open 24 hours. It has been vandalised a little, but generally it has become this icon in Christchurch. People take their visitors from out of town to go and see the book exchange on a vacant site. The Littleton Petanque Club was created in the port town of Littleton by about 35 volunteers over 2 weekends. Is a vital community space in Littleton, the town square that they haven't had for decades. It's got a petanque pitch, or boule as you may know it, and seating and a space for performance and poetry. And it's actually now the really interesting thing about that is in the master plan for Littleton. Many people have said that they want that space to stay as a community space and not be rebuilt, which is extremely interesting in terms of community-led urban design. So that's been a really interesting project in terms of the role it's played in the community. The cycle-powered cinema, designed over about 6 months by electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, on a site that was a cycle shop, screening only cycle-related films like the Triplets of Belleville, The Bicycle Thief, and a heritage film of a race in the 30s in Christchurch, actually, on the site of a former bike shop, all powered by bikes, and that was quite interesting in that it brought a lot of the cycling community to it, but also the wider community. So every gap filler project involves volunteers, but it involves different parts of the community because each project appeals to different people, obviously. We've also done the painted piano project. There's a few pianos around the place which are getting bashed on by lots of kids, and also people that just want to play piano. I've noticed quite a lot of elderly people playing, and it's actually really lovely. They're hideously out of tune, but they look great and they do get used. And finally, I've decided to show you the dancer mat, which is a converted washing machine on a vacant site. You turn up, you plug in your iPod or iPhone or MP3 player into this washing machine, put in $2 coin, and the lighting and sound are activated for 30 minutes, and hence the name dancer mat. It's kind of like laundromat. But this has been a really successful project because it allows people to dance in public, but it addresses the fact that after the earthquakes, many of the dance studios and theatre spaces, because they were in cheaper older buildings, have been lost, and there's a lack of space for that, and also that people really want a chance to play in the city. So the Dancer Mat's a project that that could very well, it will come back in the springtime. It's been packed away now for the winter, but the Dancer Mat's something that we may see enduring in Christchurch. Actually, the community has demonstrated that it's needed a space for dance in public, so maybe this is a permanent fixture in our city. But by experimenting and doing it short term, we're able to see that it does actually work, and then it's worth investing in it, more money in it longer term. So yeah, those are some of the projects that we've done thus far, and there are lots more in development for the future. Ideas from both within Gap Villa, within the kind of the people within the group, but also from members of the community that we've never met before, people that just want to make their ideas real. Yeah.
So the task ahead of us in Christchurch is actually huge, rebuilding more or less an entire city, or at least a central city area. But it may not seem like much, but I think the projects we've done so far, they're having a real impact. There's hardly a person in Christchurch that hasn't heard about Gap Villa, knows what we're doing, or
hasn't seen something. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a small city.
So there's a huge potential right now for projects of this type, and in the post-quake environment, really to try things out, to test ideas that under normal circumstances before the earthquakes it would never have been possible to do.
Or maybe not, or it would have been a lot harder. The earthquakes have provided an impetus to really rethink the way we do things here, and we refer to this time at the moment as the transitional city. There's this idea, the city is in transition, it's being rebuilt. But the transitional city for us is not something that will just stop once the buildings are rebuilt. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah, so there's this interesting tension at the moment where there's the city council, the central government are planning the rebuild of the city in terms of major infrastructure, where billions of dollars are going to be spent, a couple $100 million for a convention center and a sporting complex and whatever. And kind of underneath that, or in the midst of that, there are a few other groups like us and people who are trying to show the value of small-scale temporary things to allow for, as Carly says, a top-down and a bottom-up approach towards the rebuild.
Absolutely, because I mean, a building is great, but what use is a building if no one is really going to use it? Or these buildings that we're talking about creating are going to take years, and so what my concern is, what's going to happen in the interim? What are we going to do to nourish and connect the communities, the people here, and particularly the younger creative people? A lot of those people have left because it can be a pretty bleak place to live. But if you tip that on its head and say that these vacant spaces, vacant buildings, walls that have been exposed are blank canvases for experimentation and innovation, then suddenly it becomes a place for opportunity, and it flips, and people start to come because there's vacant spaces, and there's an openness and a willingness to nurture this. And I actually think this is extremely powerful for changing Christchurch's identity in a way. It's certainly a lot of eyes on us here.
That idea of experimentation is really important on another level, because I don't know, we're in some sense rebuilding a city from scratch, and nobody knows what's the best way or what's the right way to do it. And if you do everything and the billions of dollars decide on paper where everything goes, that's not allowing for any flexibility.
Yeah.
And we think it's really important that these sort of small-scale projects are a chance to try out ideas. That's right. And a lot of them won't work and will disappear, and that's okay, but you might be really amazed by the response to some projects, as we have been, and go, man, you know what? Christchurch on a permanent basis might just sustain a danceomat.
Yeah.
That might be something,
Yeah.
you know, and we never would have known if we didn't have this opportunity to just try it.
But councils find it difficult to do things of a temporary nature because they have to justify where all the money goes. Whereas creative people being given a little bit of money and an opportunity, it's quite incredible, and there's a lot of learning that can go in there. So we talk about gap filler, or these vacant space projects has actually been a kind of urban design of experimenting about seeing what works, and about really connecting people here and now to the rebuild, to their city, which is extremely important because we're in a time of a lot of unknowns and waiting. People are quite disempowered, waiting for insurance, waiting for their land, whether it can be rebuilt upon, waiting for blah blah blah. By giving people the chance to actually do something here and now, or seeing other people do things here and now, that action is very, very important and really seductive for people, I think.
Trying to empower people is a difficult thing. One of the odd ironies that we're discovering is that but we are in some sense successful. There are more people, I think, in Christchurch now thinking, oh, I can do something, and coming up with ideas and wanting to share them. But oftentimes they're coming to us saying, hey, gap filler, can you do this for me? Or can I be involved in some way, but I really need your help? And what we'd really like to do is people to see what we're doing and just go off and do it on their own. And so that's a problem we're trying to deal with now, to figure out how to actually inspire people to go off on their own without needing us.
So we're trying to open source our documents on our website. We've got our legal agreement, our how we do what we do,
all the designs to all of our projects, everything.
So try and make it easy for people to learn from us, get a bit of support, but then go and do it on their own, because that way it's far more powerful. We are loath to be a bottleneck or have a monopoly on vacant space projects. It's changing people's thinking citywide, nationwide, to vacant space, because it's part of any city. This could have happened anyway, but the earthquake has made it possible, has opened people's eyes to what was already a problem, has taken the slow death of Christchurch's inner city at just on steroids because there's just nothing but space. So it's extremely interesting.
So the other thing that we've undertaken recently is we did a bit of a research report, I guess, into vacant space initiatives in different cities around the world, how they worked, how they contributed to the urban regeneration and the economic regeneration of an area. And we've made recommendations to the City Council, and it sounds like they've got in behind it now, and we're forming a new entity called Life in Vacant Spaces, which is purely a broker agency. So anyone who has an idea for a temporary project, a one-off unique pop-up business or whatever that they want to make happen, this entity will deal with all the bullshit and the barriers, legal agreements, health and safety, insurance, all of that stuff, so that someone that has an idea can just be matched up with a space and get to work.
And you think, you know, that's amazing, like an idea brokerage in a way. You know, why do we need that? Why don't people just go do stuff? It's not part of our culture here in New Zealand. There is a line between public and private, as you know, we talked about before. This kind of entity that breaks down the barriers could be quite incredible, and by providing opportunities for a lot of people, particularly younger people, to experiment with their ideas, that's going to create a very interesting city. It's a very fluid. It's a fluid time here.
The real irony, what we'd like to catch, I think, is that this idea that you don't need permission to make a stamp on your city, to change your city. We're trying to capture that feel, but actually with permission in a way. So we're doing everything. We're actually entering into legal agreements, dealing with health and safety and everything, and trying to open the door so that other people feel empowered by that. An interesting paradox.
So we encourage you to check out our website and see what we've done in greater detail, read some of our project reports, learn from us, ask us questions, share with us what you know and what you do wherever you are around the world. We've joined our mailing list, follow us on Facebook, keep in touch with what we're doing in Christchurch, and come and visit us sometime in the future. Come and see Christchurch and play some mini golf. That's our next project. Mini golf, different golf holes on gaps all around Christchurch City. So, thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.